He keeps himself in trim by bending bars of iron. This bar is the genuine article which we tested before he began to play with it.
Beyond the bend, beyond the bend.
Amir, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Right on. Well, I'm extra excited to have you on because anytime I have someone on that bends steel as well as participates in some type of grappling sport, these are the guys I like to talk to the most. You won't mind all of the jiu-jitsu parallels that I draw with steel bending. I hope
absolutely.
The strict benders aren't annoyed by all of the grappling references I make, but it is what it is. So tell me about the first time that you saw someone bend a piece of steel.
So I trained at a gym over here in Troy, Michigan, and my coach, his name was Victor Torres, and he competed in a lot of grip-related stuff in college. And one day, we're all coming in early for class, and he pulls out a timber tie, and he goes, "If anybody can bend this, I'll give you a month for free." And of course, all of us guys are like big, tough guys. We all think our grips are like massive. So we all gather around. We start trying to bend them. We're like, trying to bend it like any person would. Like you'd snap a pencil. But this is like the dumbest way to bend a thing because you're not using any real strength. And so we're like, nah, this is bullshit. You can't do it. And he's like, okay. So he just bends it like nothing. And I was like, oh, check that out. And then that was it. I mean, the next day, I went to Home Depot. I bought a box of timber ties, and I asked him, I said, how do you, there has to be a trick to it. And originally when I meant there has to be a trick to it, I thought there's like a trick because it can't be that hard. And he's like, well, you got to be strong, but also, you showed me a reverse bend. And that's how he used to bend stuff, back in early college for him. And I started doing it. I bent it, and then I thought this was just the coolest thing ever. And I bought, after that, I bought Jed Johnson's ebook on nail bending. And I was like, oh, there's like other ways you can bend. And then there's like, this is the progression of steel. And that was it. From there.
That's awesome. About how long into your grappling training was that?
Probably about 7 years, maybe. I'm not actually sure when I started grappling, but it's been about 10 years this year.
Okay.
And I started bending about 2 years ago, so somewhere around there. Okay,
cool. And what type of athletic background, if you had one, did you have prior to getting into grappling?
My athletic background was like being a big fat guy. That was cool if you needed to like move some furniture. I could probably do that, but other than that, that was about it. I used to weigh about 250, and I used to weigh 250. And actually, I started jiu-jitsu, and then the hospital I work at, I work with mostly women, and they decided to do like a who can lose the most amount of weight type deal. And I was like, well, I just started this wrestling kind of thing. I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring. And man, the amount of calories I burnt doing jiu-jitsu, I lost weight so fast. I lost like maybe 40 pounds in the first year. And of course I beat them all because, look at this. But no, that's kind of like where I started losing weight. And I never did anything athletic. I tried out for the soccer team when I was in like high school. My parents made me do it, and it was like embarrassing. It was just like wrought with shame.
Wow. And how big of a guy are you now?
I walk around about 176.
Okay.
Sometimes if I am really not doing too well, I'll get up to about 180. But when I compete, there's no real incentive to compete unless I can get down to under 168. Mm-hmm. And that's like too much. I hit a bump at 170, and my body's just like, nah, we ain't doing this.
Wow. Well, that's cool anyway, though. I'm about like 160 myself, maybe a little more considering quarantine and no training right now. I don't do weight training. But any of these guys under 200 that are bending, and I know that weight doesn't have a lot to do with bending, but it's just cool to see the littler guys bend and stuff. So that's cool.
Oh, I agree, man. I agree.
Yeah. So you recently snapped a horseshoe, correct? While
Yep.
lying down. Tell me a little bit about that, because I just bent a horseshoe and I can't even comprehend, one, doing it lying down, and two, snapping one.
You know, much like jujitsu, and I'm gonna come up with an awful lot of parallels to jujitsu too, because
I love it.
I think steel bending, jujitsu, and like your other forms of conditioning are all just kind of they're all facets of the same. I mean, it's three-dimensional, but a three-dimensional coin. You know, it's like, and I think that with the technique that you get, so you start out strong, or maybe you start out weak. I guess it doesn't matter. You get a technique, and you, with time, the more you do it, the more reps you put in, reps, you start finding like very tiny nuances in angle that you end up hitting things. And you're like, oh, you know, I found if I like shrug my shoulder a split second before I stretch my arm, it kind of puts a little bit more pressure this way or that way. And then it becomes almost intuitive when you start doing it, that your technique gets refined more and more and more. And, you know, obviously it's also the use of your body. Like I've got broad shoulders, I've got short arms, I've got like a gnome body. And, you know, so for me, like the technique kind of ends up becoming a very specific personal thing, much like jujitsu. And, you know, I started with the St. Croix Forge Ultralight #2, which is like, you know, any forums you go to, they tell you that's where you start. And the first time I tried to bend one, Don showed me how to do it. Don Cummings. I went to his house. We hung out in his garage, and he showed me how to do it. And it took me like 40 minutes just to get it straight. And I was like, man, I'm never going to be strong enough to make this a regular part of things that I do. And you know, just recently, I got another shipment. I ordered from Ken Davis and Sons in Ohio. They're like real fast shipping. So plug for those guys, because they like, man, they don't screw around with how fast you get them.
That's great.
And so now my technique being what it is, like I don't put it on my hip to start it. I like squat down and pinch part of the horseshoe in between my calf and my hamstring. And when I get that first hit and I really yank it down, it covers so much ground that when I'm doing like the press on the top of my quad, I find it just opens up like so much easier. So for snapping, the two different things that I tried were, you know, basically bending it over my thigh, flipping it over. So like you're bending it like open, you're flipping it over, and then bending it open the other way.
Yes.
And I've also tried just like bending it like you're snapping a piece of steel, and then doing like a leg crush where your hands are you know, not lined up, and, you know, doing a leg crush, or I sometimes do like a chest crush where I pin one hand to the top of my quad, I hook one hand to my body, and I like squeeze down into it. And just kind of doing that over and over, like you're bending or you're trying to snap like regular 3/8 inch. And both of those worked fairly well. I like pushing down because I think my core is stronger than my ability to like push down my bench pressing motion. But the fastest snaps I ever got were I bent it completely into a heart. And then while the steel was still kind of warm for me bending it, I unbent it and then started doing it like regular steel. But that initial like folding it over to the heart shape and then pulling it back put so much strain on those weak points of the steel that I managed to snap one standing in about 22, 24 minutes. I can't remember exactly. But doing it on my back, I found it extremely hard to do that leg push. So all of it was just across the thigh or across the back of my hip, pushing it down, squeezing between my legs, pushing it down, squeezing it between my legs.
And you that was entirely lying on your back from the first bend on?
Yeah, from start to finish, man.
Wow.
The initial bend is way harder doing it completely lying down, because you don't realize how much you go and you like drop your weight into something and just go like wrench to get it started. But on the ground, it's like really, really tough, man. There's no way to generate like momentum or force. It's all just isometric squeezing.
Yeah, yeah. Are you familiar with who Daniel Strauss is?
No.
English jiu-jitsu black belt under Roger Gracie, and he's known as the Raspberry Ape. He does a ton of like strongman stuff. He has a podcast. He had David Horn on and stuff. He's a lot of people's segue from the jiu-jitsu world into grip and bending and stuff like that. So anyway, I had him on the show the other day, and he's a beast of a guy. And he said he set out to snap a horseshoe one day, and he couldn't pull it off. He said it just felt like plastic, but it wouldn't go in the end. And I don't know how much time he spent doing it, but I don't think there's too many people out there snapping horseshoes. So credit to you, man.
Well, I appreciate the credit. Like I said, I think it has a lot to do with technique. I find that actually the rate limiting step, because my endurance from jiu-jitsu and from other conditioning is pretty high. I find the rate limiting step on it is like the skin in my hands, because no matter what you're wrapping your wraps in, whether it be a rubber band or a hair tie or something like that, I've experimented with a lot of different things. I tried fishing line where I like tied it. That was, by the way, the worst. I thought maybe because it was small. No,
sounds torturous.
But after about an hour and 10 minutes, the palms of my hands just hurt so bad, and the skin's starting to like fall off. I just can't. So if I don't get it in about an hour, like it's not for me.
Wow. All right. So what's a normal training week look like? I don't know if you guys are back to grappling up there in Michigan or not, but walk me through a normal training week, including grappling and conditioning and bending.
I try and do something every single day until my body basically says, "Hey, man, you need to stop." I'm an overtrainer. I'll train until I'm completely burnt out and I can't feel feelings, and I'll be like, "Man, I don't know why I'm just walking around in a daze." And then it'll occur to me like, "Well, your diet's garbage. You don't get enough sleep, but also you're like training way too hard, way too frequently." So I'm lucky enough to have. I don't know if lucky is necessarily the right word, but I've got 50-50 custody with my kids. So on days that I don't have my kids, I go to jiu-jitsu. So Mondays and Wednesdays, I never have my kids. It's always jiu-jitsu days. And then I alternate Friday, Saturday, and Sundays. So during those Friday and Saturday, Sundays where I don't go to jiu-jitsu, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is always some form of conditioning. I try and bend at least twice a week. I find that if I'm doing like light bending, like I'm gonna, snap a couple of 60 penny nails at the end of a workout, it's fine. But if I'm doing some like heavy stuff, like I'm really trying to push myself, I'm snapping a horseshoe, I'm like really, I'm trying to go for a new challenge. I can't bend that frequently. It's got to be the only thing I do that day. And typically like the next day, even when I would go to jiu-jitsu, I'm still not back to training. There are some guys that are training here, but I'm still personally not.
Same boat here.
Yeah, like the next day, if I'm rolling, I'm like picking my rounds. I'm rolling with white belts and like kind of letting them bully me. I'm just working on moving, things like that, because I just don't have the synapses aren't firing fast enough to be like, keyed into those things. But I always try and do conditioning that is going to make sense for practical application. And that's why I think bending made so much sense to me, because we can talk about strength in a lot of different ways. Like, if a person can squat 400 pounds or bench press 300 pounds, like that's amazing. I'm never going to tell anybody they're doing anything wrong, because that's phenomenal. But to me personally, I don't lift groceries like this. I don't like when I'm playing with my kids, I'm not like squatting down and just squatting them like that. It's always, in jiu-jitsu, we have to be omnidirectionally strong. You got to be strong in every different direction. You got to have endurance. You got to have isometric strength. You also have to have explosive strength. And I found that steel bending was that. You have to, Tom Flesher said at the first Michigan steel bending competition, he's like, sometimes you just got to get grips and go crazy on it. And you know what? I find that to be like exactly like all the practical applications of when you actually need to use your muscle. If your kid's riding their bike, you're trying to teach them how to ride their bike and they fall down. It's never going to be in some orthodox grip that you catch them. You got to catch them in some weird way. You got to hold them, and now you got to pick them up from some weird direction. It's always something like out of the box that you have to do. So I think that every time I condition, there's always something grip related, because it's the number one thing that allows your strength to translate into practical application. I always do things that are core related, which bending meets the two of those requirements. So I typically tend to put bending related endeavors at the end of a workout when I'm already tired, and then I really have to mentally push through. And then I always try and do stuff that's endurance work. I never do, I'm going to do a couple sets of like a grinding movement, bench press, squat, curl, even pull-ups I kind of don't really do. I find those movements to be not like, to my particular lifestyle, I don't find them to be practical. Steel bending, on the other hand, the amount of times I've had to open a pickle jar, the amount of times I've had to like, do things that use those kind of, using that kind of strength is like far more common.
Nice. So have you spent time with the traditional lifts and sort of phased them out just because you didn't find the practical application? Or was there a time when you were just squatting, deadlifting, and bench pressing?
When I was in high school, I went to an all-boys school, and at least 2 days a week, I had gym every day, but 2 days a week were days spent in like the classic gym. Squat, bench press, military press, curl, weighted lunge, what's it called? Pull down, flies, all that kind of traditional stuff. And honestly, the main thing that I didn't like, well, first of all, I was kind of a screw up in high school. So I didn't even take gym seriously. And also, when you're out of shape and, you get teamed up with a bunch of guys by like weight class, and all those guys are like, on the varsity football team when you're a freshman in high school, it's like, this isn't for me anyway. But I've found that those guys are strong, like the guys that do those things still. And I'm not saying that those guys don't get it right. Like I said, I'm never going to tell anybody that they're doing something wrong. I just find that in doing it now, that I know what I know, after doing grappling for 10 years, after doing conditioning for probably a solid like 4 or 5 years, where I got extremely serious about all sorts of unorthodox conditioning, after doing metal bending for 2 years, after a lot of injuries, after a lot of competition, I find that, you think of the positions you find yourself in life or in grappling, and you go, how often do I use this motion? And if you don't use that motion, it's not really, it's a waste of time. I mean, I'm not like, I don't want to talk shit to anybody, but I find it's an inefficient use of your time.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Also, it's boring. I'm going to throw that out there. That's just boring to me. I can't wrap my mind around it.
Yeah. I definitely understand that. My trajectory, especially during pandemic, was I lost jujitsu, which was really like hard to wrap my mind around. It's something I depend on for physical and mental release and sanity and, so much, right? And, I trained pretty much every day of the week. And so when that was gone, what now? So I just pivoted. I worked with a strength coach remotely doing a program where he knew I was a grappler. So he tried to make it, he actually, shout out Scott Shetler. He made it really good for grappling. I haven't been able to test it yet, but it had a lot of traditional stuff and then some non-traditional stuff. And just going deep into things, like whether it was like bands growing up, I'd always figure out who they listen to and go back, and then who they listen to and go back. So just getting nerdy about stuff, I discovered like grip. And then from checking out the grip world, then I saw bending, you know what I mean? So now I'm kind of doing a combination of like, I'm still very much squatting, deadlifting, and benching, but I'm working in a ton of grip stuff and a lot of bending, and I kind of just feel like it's a good, complete way of being strong. I hope it translates to the mat, you know what I mean? But I know my teammates are getting worried when they see me posting the horseshoe and the cards and everything else. So it should be fun returning to the mat. But
we can hope.
What's that?
I said we can hope.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked about the horseshoe. What are some of the other certs or big bends that you're most proud of?
Actually, the most proud things that I did were ones before I kind of really got into it because they seemed impossible. So I started out with timber ties, and timber ties are like fairly easy. They're fairly easy to start. I don't want to diminish anybody if that's where you are, if you're starting or whatever. Timber ties are a great place to start, but when I started, to me that was like extremely challenging. And then I said,
I'm not sure. I don't know if anything. Is a timber tie like a 60D, or what are we talking as far as length?
It's a 6-inch nail, but it's made out of like a softer metal, and it almost looks like it's like a spiraled pattern all the way down.
Oh, okay.
And they don't have the same weight. Like it looks almost like it would be smaller than a 1/4 inch.
Okay.
Or thinner, I should say, than a 1/4 inch. But they're like it looks like you had a square piece, but you twisted it
Oh,
at
all right.
the end. So you can buy them like a box of 70 at the Home Depot by my house is like, I don't know, 16 or 17 bucks.
Okay. Okay.
But when I started there, I didn't really have any coaching. It was before I bought the ebook on how to bend, and I kind of just was like, well, I'm gonna see what I'm doing. So I bought some random assorted bolts and
what were you using for wraps at this time? Just out of curiosity.
I wear leather boots always. I don't own, I think, any other shoes that aren't leather boots. And I had a pair that was like falling apart, so I cut 2 strips that were about maybe 3 inches by maybe 5 inches out of these boots, and I just was using that. I'd like wrap it, and they weren't tight wraps because like boot leather is like tough, so it didn't like wrap tight. And I was using like my kids' hair ties just to like put it on there, just enough to like pad the insides of my hands.
Yeah.
But the first real thing that I remember being so proud of was a 5/16 bolt. Like, as a matter of fact, there's one over here, just like completely like threaded all the way down, which these are made of soft metal. I didn't know any better. But when I did it, like the 5/16, I was like, oh my God, I'm so strong. Like, I'm like, I thought I really was doing something big. And then the next thing that made me really proud was I'd bend one of those, and I'd never seen snapping before. And I started, I'd hook it underneath my thigh, and I'd like lace my fingers into it, and I'd pull up and I'd stomp down with my thigh, and I'd bend it, and then I'd squeeze it again, and then I'd pull it, and they'd break. And I thought I invented this. And I just thought I was showing people like, oh man, I'm snapping these bolts. I'm like this huge badass guy. And interestingly enough, I started an Instagram for completely jiu-jitsu related things. And since then I've barely posted any jiu-jitsu related anything. But where I work, I've got a shirt that says the name of the hospital I work on. And I posted this because I was like, this is a new thing. I'm gonna be the first one snapping these bolts. And Don Cummings saw the video, and he goes, hey man, I saw this video that you posted. It's got the name of a hospital. Like, I live in Michigan. Is it the same hospital that's like right by me? And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh man, like that's cool. And it turns out he lives like within almost walking distance of me. And that's actually how I met Don Cummings, which was rad. But I mean, he basically like showed me the greater world of bending and snapping, and I was like, oh, this is like not even a thing. Even my technique was terrible. Like I didn't invent this, certainly. But for a while I was really proud of those things that I like discovered it myself.
Sure. That's cool. That's cool. Just like taking it to that level, like just on your own, is wild. I don't know if I would have like I ordered the Iron Mind bag of nails, and I was so eager to try this. Before it even came, I went out to my garage and just found some threaded bolt like you just showed, wrapped it in like a dish towel, and just started like hitting on this thing as hard as I can. Like my hands, dig it into my hands and stuff. And I could barely even like kink the thing, and never mind trying to snap it. So props to you for taking it that far. That's pretty cool. And what kind of boots were they, just out of curiosity?
Corcoran's.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, you can get them from the Army Navy surplus store. I had a friend who was like big into old World War II history, and I always wore boots. I usually wear like Doc Martens and stuff. And he was like, "Oh man, you got to check out this brand. It was good enough for our soldiers in World War II." And they were, I don't know why I even remembered it when I went to go to the store to go buy some, but I was like, "Oh, I'll check these out." And I wore those for like, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years. I've been wearing those.
Oh, wow. Well, it's meant to be, because everybody keeps telling me of this badass bender named Aaron Corcoran. So ties it all together.
It's all related, man.
The 6 degrees of steel bending. All right. So you talked about tearing up your hands. Do you do anything for recovery or no?
Actually, I gotta plug one of my sponsors, Greenhouse
Whoa.
of Walnut Lake. They're a dispensary in the area, and they supply me with some CBD. And there's some CBD rubs that I put on my hands,
Nice.
especially early on, man. Now, like my hands are like the muscles in my hands are kind of more used to it. But man, there were days that like, and to this day, if I wake up, like I can't really use my hands for the first probably, I don't know, 45 minutes after I wake up. But man, there were days that like my hands and my like up to mid forearm would hurt until probably like 2, 3 p.m. Just I couldn't stretch them out all the way. So I used some CBD rub. I'm not one of those people who's like a jujitsu zealot who's like, oh, CBD is gonna cure, malaria and like I'm not like that. But I did find some really good results with some CBD rubs. On days that I really decide to push myself, there's some CBD patches that I get, and they help me sleep, which to me, sleeping is like a really big problem. Not just because I'm an extremely light sleeper, but, getting enough sleep or getting long enough sleep or getting truly restful sleep, I find is like for all athletic endeavors, good sleep is extremely important, and it's the thing that I have the least of. So there's that. I found stretching after doing a lot of bending, like sitting there doing like the standard stretch out your arm, just the basic stuff, stretching your thumbs. I find that kind of stuff has been stuff that really helps me a lot. But also, I probably don't take recovery as seriously as I should.
Yeah.
I'll concede.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you, man. It's a couple things there. One, I would get injured in jiu-jitsu, just like pull something or whatever. And people, I have doctors and nurses that I train with, and they'd be like, okay, we'll go home and ice it. And I just kind of thought icing it was like the same as not icing it for some reason. So I would just like be like, yeah, sure, I'll ice it. And it's just like, and then one day I actually iced something. And I was like, holy shit, this works really well. Like I actually iced it for like more than 5 minutes, And I was just like, look at this. This works. And what was the other thing? Oh, the other thing about sleep, man. Like, it's unfortunate we sort of have no other choice in the society that we live in, where that is like we put you want to start something new or add something to your day. What do? You just tack it on and then sleep less. It stinks, And it's like, I've definitely gone through periods of my life where I wanted to do 2-a-days on top of a freaking regular job. So I'm waking up at 6, waking up at 5 to train at 6 to, get back home and shower and then do it again at night. And it's just like, I reached a point where I was like, I don't feel like training, and that's not like me, So it's like, I feel you on the sleep. And I know some friends that use those bands on their wrists that give them a readout of like how well they're sleeping and when they're ready to train and stuff like that. I've often thought about using one of those because I'd be interested to know like how well the sleep that I'm getting is, obviously not right now with a 4-month-old, but in normal times. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you,
go ahead.
Go. So a thing that I find is the worst for me is actually less muscle soreness, and it's more what they call like neuromuscular fatigue, where it's like there's like if you overtax yourself, especially with like going all in like full bore isometric training, or if you do like the next day after, let's say, a really hard fought tournament, where you might not feel physically that sore, but your brain kind of feels cloudy and you feel just kind of like, let's say you roll the next day, like guys are just beating you and you can't like remember fast enough, like the technique you're supposed to do. I find that bending was extremely hard for this. Now, I've always had some kind of problems with my brain, but a few years ago I had a pretty bad concussion. Like it was real bad. I went to the hospital. My speech was slurred and my speaking was like really slow for a while. And it like, I've had like, it was so bad that I've still like, this is like, I think at this point, 3.5 years later, I still have like really bad problems with like impulse control. I have problems with like emotional regulation. I'm like a lot more moody. And I'm going to tell, as like a random plug for everyone to know, like, take concussions extremely seriously. They're like a really big deal.
Was this from training?
No, actually it wasn't. It's a wild story, but it involves my ex-wife, and we were going through a divorce, so we won't get into it. But I mean, I'm sure
It's all good. Say no more, man.
But I found, especially after that concussion, you know, if I train hard, like real hard, especially bending, because most of the conditioning I do is like a lot of endurance, but I don't really like, you know, the training that I do is like very long and difficult, but it's not like I'm peaking my intensity level till complete failure of my body. With bending, I do that. You know, you're putting every ounce of muscle you have into those bends, and you're holding it sometimes for 7, 8, 10, 12 seconds. I find the next day, if I roll, I'm getting beat up by everyone. If I roll with the kids class, they are beating me up. And I found that the hardest parts of recovery weren't even necessarily my body, it was my brain, and not being able to like do it the next day. Yeah. And which is why I only really bend about, twice a week. Or if I do like light bending, which is something that I know I can bend. I do a couple of them just to kind of keep me, keep my technique sharp and everything. But I find that the neuromuscular fatigue is like the biggest problem. And the things that unfortunately really heal that are good sleep and better nutrition, which I eat like a goat, so I can't say that I do that. And, there are some supplements that you can take that are supposed to be good. Tyrosine, L-glutamine is supposed to be good for that. I put L-glutamine in my coffee every morning. But yeah, that recovery to me is probably a little bit different than a lot of people, because my rate limiting step is my brain and not actually my body.
Yeah. Are you aware of who Jared Weiner is?
The name sounds...
He runs BJJ United out of Philly.
Yes, I think we actually had a person that trained there, and where I used to train is like right in the middle of like a lot of corporate places. So when people would come in from out of town, they train there. I'm pretty sure I've met a brown belt from there. Okay.
So I'll send you the podcast, and maybe you have time to listen to it. But he was on a podcast, and he had a very similar experience with 2 back-to-back concussions from training. Yeah. But he had very similar mental things go on, and he had to deal with a number of different like therapists to come back. And I think he finally maybe competed again this year, but he had a real long road of hardship with concussions, and he's always like talking about how you have to just take them so super seriously. It'd probably be interesting for you to hear his story. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, man, that's, we think about concussions like, okay, well, how long can I get back to training? But like I never really stopped training when I got a concussion. Like I couldn't do any actual conditioning because like repetitive movements were like very difficult for me. I couldn't look down. But I continued training, but I'd just be really selective about the partners I picked. And I mean, everybody says like, oh, you should never roll with white belts if you're injured. But like, I found that if I roll with white belts, mostly I can kind of control them enough that I can sort of play with them, but I can dictate the intensity. Yeah. And so I continued rolling, which was probably not great for my recovery. It took a long time to recover. Instead of conditioning, I would just go on like really long walks around my neighborhood. I live in a real small city over here in Michigan, and like to walk to downtown and all the way through downtown and back to my house is about 4 miles. Nice. So I'd wait till the sun went down, it was cool, and I would just walk, but that was all I could do. So I did that, and like light rolling for about 20 minutes at the end of class with like a couple of partners that I knew I was better than and bigger than, which makes it sound like I was just beating people up, but like I'm extremely light at rolling, so nobody ever got hurt, nobody ever got a bad round with me. But yeah, man, concussions, like you really can't fuck around with them. They're really awful with long-term effects.
Yeah. Thankfully, I don't know if I've ever had one to my knowledge, and I've led a very concussive, heavy lifestyle between skateboarding and punk and hardcore shows, and and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so knock on something that I've been concussion free. But how about injuries from bending? Have you dealt with anything significant?
The worst injuries I've had are like the inside of my hands, just being so sore. My right arm, I have a habit of like pulling the tendon in my elbow. I don't know why it's always my right, but that sometimes I've been really trying to, and I don't know why it is that my double overhand bend is like really weak. Like my reverse bend is probably about as strong as my double overhand bend. So I've never been able to bend a 3/8 inch bolt, like a regular carriage bolt, completely threaded. It's softer steel. And lately at work, because I got like my desk at work is like half work and then it's like half just bending related stuff.
And
but
what do you do for a living?
I'm sorry?
What do you do for a living?
I got like a weird job. I work at an infusion pharmacy where we deliver meds to people that like, instead of being at the hospital and receiving IV, and I'm the head of the drivers. So I drive a bit, but also it's kind of like a lot of like organizational type stuff. Yeah, they gave me a desk, and I hope nobody I work with hears this. They gave me a desk, but there's not really a reason for me to have one. So it's just like half bending stuff and then half like some papers that I'm like, I'll get to those, but then like I kind of never do.
Yeah, I've been working from home, and if you go up and look at my desk right now, there's grippers on it. There's bands for doing like face pulls. I have like a couple of nails wrapped up there that I'm just like hitting on while I take a break from the computer. It's like they probably look very similar at this time. So we kind of talked about the strength that's developed from bending, but how about where do you feel like you're stronger now due to bending? Have you noticed improvements in your game, in jiu-jitsu, that you feel stronger now due to bending, or stronger in other areas? I know you're not doing many conventional lifts, but just if there are some, take me through some ways you feel now stronger due to bending.
Well, okay. First of all, and I don't want to brag, but I'm almost unwrist lockable. Like my wrists are like preternaturally fat. So like I've got like the ham wrists, but like, man, I've had guys that are roughly my size, like almost put their body weight down, like on my wrist where it was like a little bit bent. I've just like straightened it out. And I'll usually tell them like, listen, man, against a normal mortal human, like you'd have snapped their wrist, but like, I mean, my wrists are like extremely strong. So that is one thing that I absolutely love about.
You gotta get Pete the Greek up there.
There's that. I found that the real translation to grappling, especially, is the density of my body. And I know that's kind of like a weird observation, but when I started bending, when I get side control, a lot of people are like, man, you feel like a hard mass, like against my body. Like it's like my casa is like, my lats got so like physically hard that they're like, man, it feels almost like there's like a plate underneath, like on top of me, pushing me down, which is like a really weird compliment, but I was complimented nevertheless. I also find that like, so I have a really movement-based game. My game is not built around strength because I started out being fat and I started out not being very strong. And, when I started jiu-jitsu, I had a coach that was always talking about who had beautiful jiu-jitsu, not about who was good, not about who could get the taps, but like whose jiu-jitsu was like elegant and beautiful. And I said, I want the most beautiful jiu-jitsu. And I really took it like a zealot to not ever like muscle people. And, most people that roll with me don't, I think, really identify how strong I actually am. But every so often, you're like, all right, I don't feel like being gentle today. I feel like beating the shit out of someone. And when I go, people are like, oh my God, like I was unprepared for what happened. Like if I clinch somebody, like my clinch is pretty strong in general. It always was. You're a fat guy. You're always going to have strong shoulders because you carry around a lot of bulk. But like if I really clinch somebody and I pull them as hard as I can, the amount of time that I can hold somebody going 100% squeezing, first of all, is longer than most people are used to. but also like those micro adjustments you make when you're really trying to hold a hit, where it's like you feel almost like intermittent firing of muscles to like continue putting pressure in a way. I found that has become the thing that really helps. Like you catch somebody in a guillotine, right? And a guillotine requires you to like bend your body down and like roll up almost like in a half circle. But also it's the same kind of stuff that if you're like really putting forth a hard hit on a reverse bend. So when I do that, people are used to like, oh, I can weather a guillotine for like the 6 seconds until you burn your arms out, but not mine. Like I'll hold you for 15 seconds going maximum if I feel like it until, you know, your head pops off. Or I can hit the person so hard. And, you know, weirdly enough, the real proof in the pudding was when I started bending about 5 months in or so. Like I roughhouse with my kids all the time. You know, I think every person should roughhouse with their kids, boy or girl. I think kids don't get enough like kind of play where they see like, oh, like touching is okay. You know, there's a time and a place for close physical contact, and it's got to be in the you know, in a specific spot. But like there was a couple times that, you know, I'd be roughhousing with my kids and they're like, Dad, you're squeezing me too hard. And I felt like I was squeezing them like the same amount that I'd be like squeezing them playing with them. They're little kids, you know, I'm not trying to beat the shit out of them. But they'd like complain to me and be like, oh, you're squeezing me too hard. And I was like, I'm getting like stronger to the point that my brain hasn't caught up to how strong I actually am. You know, and that's kind of weird. Yeah,
that's funny. And I'm a guillotine. I like the guillotine quite a lot, so I'm happy to hear that because I haven't used any of this hopefully strength that I've developed through bending yet on the mat. So I can't wait to return, and I'm gonna start doing more reverse bending if it helps the guillotine. So that's cool.
I think my favorite unbraced bend is reverse. I mean, it's maybe because I'm the best at it. And it's kind of where I started. You know, the coach who kind of like introduced me to it, like that's what he taught me. Yeah. But I found that you know, the reverse bend is like, so what I do with timber ties now is I'll get one and I'll reverse bend it, and then I'll flip it over and then I'll catch the piece. I'll use this piece. So I'll reverse bend it, right? And then I'll flip it up. My hands are too fat for this, but I will grab it. What the hell was I doing? Oh, like this. And then I'll slide my fingers in this way, and then I'll start pulling it open this way, and then I'll reverse bend it on the other hand, open it this way. And I found that the amount of times that I've hit somebody with like a bow and arrow choke from doing this, if I bow and arrow choke you, man, your head is coming off your body. Like that is a number one. Like I can bow and arrow choke you from standing. I don't have to turn my body into it. Like if I catch you standing here, your head's going to be like a Pez dispenser. Like that's it. Just, it's coming off.
Awesome. You know, what's funny is before I was even aware there were techniques. It was like day one, I got my nails from Iron Mind, and I'm just, I wrapped the white nail in a single pad because I didn't know that you wrap the ends in double pads. And I know some guys do single pad and whatever. But when I just attacked this thing, at first I tried out here, you know, like double overhand with no like body put into it. Then I probably switched to double underhand. And then what actually got these nails moving, and I even got up to blue doing it this way, I think, was like a reverse, but with a twisted rear wrist. Like,
oh yeah, that makes sense.
So weird. Like I don't.
So almost like you're doing the. So almost like you're going here, just like at a weird angle, like here.
Yeah. People just listening to this will love this right now. But so yeah, it was like a reverse with a backwards rear wrist, and it just felt natural. I don't know. It was the strangest thing. I haven't gone back to it now that I learned actual techniques. But all right, man. So we've reached towards the end of the show, so I'm going to put you through what I call the medley. You ready to go? All right. Favorite thing to bend?
Horseshoes.
Oh, hardest thing to bend for you?
Anything double overhand. The 3/8 inch double overhand. I'm still working on it. I can barely get a wobble in it.
Real quick aside from that. Do you think that has anything to do with shoulder mobility because of posture developed in jiu-jitsu?
You know, that I don't know, but, and this is like a weird thing as a sidebar. I have no pecs. Like, I'm not sure why this was. I never used them. My shoulders are like preternaturally large, but if you actually see like the profile view of me, I'm like real like slim. And like if you push into me, like you're hitting bone. Like there's barely any. And it may have something to do with the fact that I can't like actually bring my hands like even when you roll, like I've got almost nothing. Everything I do is with my shoulders. Like even when I do push-ups, the only place that gets tired is like the backs of my shoulders. That's it.
Interesting.
So may have something to do with that.
Yeah, because I've felt like I have the strength to bend a lot of stuff, but I'm just having trouble with the mobility of my shoulders, getting it up under my chin. And I think it's because I'm primarily a butterfly guard player, and so my posture is very much like crunched in, you know. So I've been a lot of guys have given me some good advice on mobility, so I've been working on that to try to counter some of those years of crunching everything in, you know.
Well, if you can get the initial, like if you can get an initial kink, like just any amount, I find like if you watch Don Cummings' YouTube videos, and I mean everybody should. That guy's like something to behold. He actually does this thing where when he's putting the finishing touches on something, he'll like move it slightly to the side and then like throw his arm down. So it's almost like he's almost like pitching a baseball.
Yeah.
And the way that it works, I think, is a little bit more clement on the shoulder.
Oh, okay.
Like to me, that's the only thing I can do. I can pinch as hard as I can in a double overhand, but after that, I call it the Cummings smash, where you like kind of go and like you like use almost half your body in this like winding motion. And I find that to be like the only way I can really finish something off in double overhand. Yeah.
I was actually sent a very cool video. I noticed Don does that too, and Jaden Majensky sent me a video of EJ. I don't know how to say his last name. I think it's Livesay. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so he was breaking down like finishing touches, and he did a very similar thing, locking it with one hand and almost like pitching it with the other. It's very cool.
Yeah.
All right. How about the strongest bending style for you?
Like anything that I can really engage my core. I love reverse bending, and it's kind of hard to explain. Like my favorite actual bend is I will pin my hand into my thigh, and then I'll hold it with the opposite side hand, and I'll do like a standing crunch where I'm trying to touch my shoulder to my opposite side knee, almost where I like really wrench in, and I feel like all of my lats, my back, my shoulders, I feel everything going into it, and it's probably one of my most powerful actual bends, and it feels really good. It just feels like your whole body is working for you.
Wow! And will you do that with short bar or like or anything?
Mid range. I mean, I find with like short things like 6 inches, 7 inches, it's like a little hard to get like a good grip on it. But if we're talking mid bars, if we're talking like long bars, if I need to like bend the end of a long bar, I'll almost always try and go for that first. And if I can't, then I'll like, you know, push my shin or do a leg squeeze, things like that.
That's cool. That's unique. I haven't really heard anybody speak of that style. That's cool though. I like that. All right. Something outside of training, grappling, strength sports in general that you enjoy.
Eating. Eating.
Right on.
Oh, man. Like, I eat way too much. I eat bizarre stuff. I'm always pushing the envelope. Like, I'm like, you know, okay, well, I'm going to eat a pizza, but now I'm going to try some other weird spices on it. I'm going to throw my own cheese on it. I'm going to do this, that, and the other. Like, oh, I just love eating. I love it too much. I love it too much.
Yeah. Well, jiu-jitsu is good for that. Balance it out a little bit. All right. What's the one bend that got away?
I'm sorry, one more time?
What's the one bend that's got away so far?
A double overhand 3/8 inch. I know I keep coming back to it, but like I literally tried to do it today, and I just like I walked away like being like, oh, my hands hurt, my wrists hurt. I'm like so mad, and I just can't seem to do it. But I'm still working on it.
Nice. Who's the strongest person you know?
Don, 100%. Like I gotta plug that guy, dude. I've seen that guy bend things in front of me, while watching him do it, and I've just been like, I don't really believe he did that. It's crazy. Like you go to his garage, and he's just got stuff hanging, and you like think about it, you're like, like if you drove a car over that thing, it wouldn't do that. It like doesn't make sense in your mind.
Yeah, he was, and I think I told him on the show yesterday, like, he really opened my eyes. Like, prior to seeing his Instagram, I kind of thought, like, okay, the red nail is sort of like the top of the mountain, and maybe, I don't know what this gold nail thing is, but I don't think it's been done, so whatever. And I just stumbled upon Don's Instagram, and he's cutting gold nails down to bend with his legs and bending 2 heads at a time, and just such crazy stuff. And it's like, I was going to tell him yesterday, but I don't know if he would have understood the references. He's like the Marcelo Garcia of like steel bending. He really is. He's like out there making it look so easy. Like,
and you know what? The beauty of Don, actually, first of all, is that like if you talk to him, he's just like a normal dude. He's not like, oh, all I do is bend and like he's like a guy. He's got a family. He's got like a job. Clearly, he's very good at his job. And then, he does these crazy things, but he's always pushing himself. Yeah. Like every time I talk to him, if you ask that guy what he's working on, he'll like tell you some new goal. And you go, well, do you think you can do it? And he'll be like, well, right now, no, but I'm doing this. These are the steps I'm going to, and he's got a whole plan. It's like very linear. And then the next thing you know, he's posting a video like, oh, this is me making it look easy. Just, that's it.
Yeah. It's very inspiring. I hope I can make it out to his next event in 2021. And
you should, man. It's so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah. And I like that he's just in his garage, like with no music too. It's just like the most serene like thing. And then he just bends the biggest thing ever. I was telling him on the show yesterday. I love that there's no like metal playing or anything. It's just complete silence. He just gets in the zone, grunts, and then like the largest thing on earth is bent. It's just wild.
I was wrapping the red nails when he bent, I think 103 red nails. And he called me, he was like, hey man, would you mind if you came over? I don't have enough wraps. I'm gonna need like somebody constantly wrapping as I'm going. So for like 2 hours and 5 minutes or whatever it is, like just almost silent. Every now and then, like somebody would like cheer him on, or somebody would walk by, like one of his neighbors, he'd like wave to him, say, hey. People would pop in, but like that was it. It was just super. It was like as if it was just like another day, like doing absolutely nothing, sitting around, just cool as a cucumber.
So cool. How about the best piece of advice you were ever given?
The best piece of advice I ever get. Sometimes you just got to get your grips and go crazy on it. That's it, man.
That's a good quote. Maybe we could get a shirt with that.
Honestly, man, setting goals, I think, is a really good one. Just because you can't do it today doesn't mean you can't do it tomorrow. In a weird way, I couldn't bend a grade 5 bolt double overhand. I could not do it. And I don't know, like one day I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. And I started doing some like exercises, complementary exercises and that. And like, but that was my goal. I started with the end in mind and I did it. And now it's still not my strongest bend, but like I can bend a grade 5 bolt.
Nice. And what's the funniest reaction a person has had when they find out what you do in your spare time?
Oh my God. They just look at me and go like, well, why would you do that? And you go, well, because I'm like a big man. I'm like a strong guy. I can do stuff. And they're like, yeah, but like you paid money for that. And then you like bent it and now you can't use it anymore. Like that's the most typical and also the most bizarre reaction.
Nice. All right. You made it through the medley. Congratulations. All right. In closing, who's someone you'd like to see me have on the show?
I mean, you already got Don. I like Tom Flesher. I think he's a guy who bends out of New York. Yeah. He's like just an interesting guy. He's real cool. I met him at the first bending competition. He was a super cool guy. There's another guy who's actually another local guy around here. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. Oh my God, I wrote it down. I had like a paper that like, don't forget these people's names. But he runs Fat Bastard Barbell Company.
Okay.
Oh my God, I can't think of his name. Oh, I'm so embarrassed.
The dude that runs Fat Bastard?
I'm sorry?
The dude that runs Fat Bastard?
Yeah.
Andrew, right?
Yes, Andrew Pankey. Thank you. Oh my God. You should get that guy in here. There's a guy, also local guy named Darren Shaleman. Dude, Darren Shaleman literally looks like Popeye. His forearms are like proportionally large, but that guy can tell you so much stuff about training. But those are the guys, man, that are like just colorful characters. I think you'd have a good time with them.
Nice. All right. Where can people find you on social media if you want to be found?
My Instagram is @rolls2hard.
Nice.
It was a joke because I don't ever roll hard. I'm super light. I've got a Facebook page that's more jiu-jitsu and less bending. It's just Amir Bayour. There's a picture of me in a red kurtka for Sambo, back when my facial hair was a bit crazier. And I got a YouTube, which is Rolls Too Hard. It's, like I said, it's mostly jiu-jitsu related stuff. It's tips for white belts, some stuff that I wish I knew as a white belt. I kind of want to show some bending stuff, but like, man, when you live that close to Don, how are you going to be making YouTube videos to teach people shit when that guy is like your neighbor?
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Amir, that's the end of the show, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and it was a lot of fun talking to you.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks, man.